So why don't we get some basics out of the way? Well, I visited.
Well, I'm an Aries. No, I'm kidding.
I visited there, I don't know, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and was very intrigued by the whole deal, the sitting down and playing games while eating and hanging out with friends.
What day?
So, that was like
was it a weekend or? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you here 2 Sundays ago when it was a madhouse?
I don't know if it was Madhouse, but
okay, it was like crazy busy 2 Sundays ago.
Something around there.
Okay, gotcha.
So I think you told other people this, but I think we would like to know as well. Where did you guys get the idea? Like, what was the beginning? How did you decide to do this? Just any kind of basic beginning stuff you'd like to tell me.
We had both been working in different aspects of the entertainment industry, and kind of been, sick of it, of the silliness of it, which is not to say that there are others interested aren't already silly. And we'd been board gaming for a while, and we'd heard of this sort of idea that was popping up, elsewhere in Canada and overseas in Korea, that sort of thing. But back in 2011, 2012, when we first kind of were mulling it over, no one had figured out how to do it in the United States. So we said, oh, maybe there's a reason for that, or maybe it's just no one's just struck while the iron, is still hot. So we kind of put our heads together, and we were kicking our ideas around. Terry had been making pies for a long, long time, and pastry and that sort of thing. So we kind of put our heads together and said, well, this is kind of the space that we'd want to go and hang out at all day and play games. So, we're sure we're not the only ones. So a lot of sweat and blood and all that later, here we are.
So what do you guys think did not work about other people's models? And then what did you think worked about yours?
Well,
or rather, what change did you make that you think worked better?
The idea, well, in terms of, because it's a model which there aren't a lot of other models out there, when we were first starting out. There weren't a lot of, examples that were working sort of in North America. There's Snakes and Lattes, which had popped up in Canada, which sort of kind of set the model, and which a lot of us are kind of, adhering to and following, partly because it seems to be the right price point, and partly because the format seems to work best. We would find that the model is partly because of just the way the hobby is. If you're sitting down to a game or a series of games, as it were, as we would find in our game group, some people would play all day. So you have to have a venue that's going to be able to support people sitting there all day, and also a venue at which you're able to sit there all day without having to interrupt or go somewhere else and come back, that sort of thing, food, drink, all that stuff. So you could find venues that you could play at all day, but which didn't have food. It'd be like game stores or comic book stores or something like that, where you could sit there and play all day on their tables, but all they've got is Gatorade and M&Ms and Skittles, and you can't survive. Well, some people can survive on that, and I can't. So,
I think a lot of people would.
You can in your 20s, and then you turn 30, and your metabolism changes. Or you could go to a restaurant which has all the food and all the space in the world, but they're going to give you the stink eye after an hour and a half because you've spread out, this board game, and now you're taking up a table which they could very easily turn. So it's a strange hybrid model of restaurant, but with the benefit of also being, hobby game play space, which is kind of in some aspects, it's a nightmare for both. Because, and I say this all the time, we get so many people who love what we've done and want what we've done and not realize what it is we do when we've done it. It's the do you like sausages or do you like making sausages? It's two entirely different things. So we get people who are like, oh, I want to do this. It's all great, but a lot of it, and I tell this to a lot of people, is that this is an anti-restaurant restaurant. This is a restaurant which doesn't facilitate table turns like a normal restaurant does. So you're going to be stuck with people who are sitting at the table for 5 hours, which is a nightmare to a restaurant because the restaurant could they could turn that table 3 times. So you're going to get one meal out of a table of, let's say, 4 people sitting there for 4 hours versus 3 meals of 3 groups of 4. So it's sort of a nightmare hybrid model. That, you know, but you need to provide that. You need to be able to have people, you know, stay as long as they want. Because some games last 30 minutes and some games last like 4 hours. So,
you know, I've actually found that most of the board games I own stay on the box 1 to, like, basically half an hour, and I've finished none of them in as little as half an hour, and most of them not even close to an hour.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know,
it's usually 3 to 4 hours,
and that's just human, you know, nature. You know, in a game, even if it's a game where everyone knows the rules, you always end up kibitzing and talking and chattering, and so and so goes to the bathroom, and so and so takes a phone call, and then so and so gets in a fight with a girlfriend, you know, all that stuff like that. So yeah, it very rarely plays out, you know, according to the box. And that's if you know the rules. That's if everyone knows the rules, you know.
Right.
So,
you know them really well.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so it's a model that it is in effect a restaurant. Ultimately, this is a restaurant, and it's something that we tell a lot of people because they get enamored about the game stuff, because the food stuff either is off the radar or we make it look so easy. You know, but what I often tell people is they we want to create what you created. I'm like, do you want to own a restaurant? Because that's what it is.
Right.
You know, health department, I always say, health department doesn't care how many copies of Settlers of Catan you have. They don't care how many Dominion expansions you have. They want to know that there's no cockroaches in the kitchen, that the water in the restroom is 120 degrees, and that the cook's not sticking his finger in the soup and licking it and then sticking it back in again. You know, so health department, in the eyes of the city, the state, the feds, the local, everything, it's a restaurant. And so you have to adhere to all of the restaurant stuff that goes with it. But it's a restaurant that's also this giant, crazy play space too, you know. So, and because of the size and because of the nature of not being able to turn tables like you would in a normal restaurant, you have to put a value on the attraction, on the gimmick, so to speak, the hook, so to speak. So, to not charge for the games, which a lot of people, even nowadays, people say, oh, you guys shouldn't charge for the games. You should just, you know, have people come and then they'll buy more food. I'm like, well, no, if they're going to come, then they're just going to get the glass of water and then stay here all day. And now I'm just the library. Now I'm just the public library now, you know. And then I close and I go back to doing film and TV. You know, so there is a value to having 1,200 games on the shelves, you know, and having to maintain that and keep up with it as best we can, you know. So you have to put a price tag on the per person. On the weekends, I have to charge, like, no matter what. If you want to come in for 2 hours and sit with your girlfriend and have coffee, I have to charge you for the seat, you know, because in the middle of the afternoon when I'm full up and there's the group who wants to come play games and you're just sitting here having coffee, that's, you know, money that I could have been making off the people playing games, and they're not. You're just having the $2 latte or the $3 latte. So I have to charge for the seat. I always say it's like going to the movies and saying, "Oh, I'm not going to watch the movie. I'm just here to eat the popcorn." It's like, well, you know, you're going to sit in the movie theater. You're going to, whether or not you watch the movie, I don't care. You know, you know, you have to pay for the ticket. You know, so so yeah, it's one of those things where I obviously you could crochet for 10 hours for all I care, but I have to charge you for the seat. You know, So
hey, that's the next big thing, a crocheting place.
A crocheting cafe, you know, just give it time. I'm sure there's a quilting and knitting one somewhere. But
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I have to admit that when I first went in there, and I think
you're like, what the hell? $5? Yeah, does it cover charge?
It's a really weird social thing. Like, why is it that we are willing to pay that which we're willing to pay for? Because my wife and I just saw a movie, you know, at the Grove, and it was at least $15 a piece.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
For 2 hours, no, an hour and a half of entertainment. So it's $15 a piece, and we're both just so thirsty, so we got.
So you got the big gulp, yeah.
It was another I might be exaggerating, but it was like another $30.
Oh yeah.
So we're paying a total, if I can't do math, 30 plus 30.
That's $129. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what I find amazing is,
and it's done in 2 hours.
Yeah, an hour and a half, only an hour and a half.
Exactly.
Obviously, I'm not including trailers and shit, but what I find interesting about that, psychologically speaking, is I admit when I first walked into GameHäus, I was like, $5? What the fuck, man? But then I was like, well, why am I willing to pay $15? So I'm basically paying $5 per half hour of entertainment, which I usually don't find is a 1-to-1 ratio. I usually find that the movie's bad or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Do that.
Yeah.
I'm still willing to do that. So why is it that it's socially acceptable to do the one or the other? But that actually leads me to and I of course understand your explanation. Yeah, you've got to be able to subsidize it somehow. But then what I wonder is, how did you guys decide on the price point? Because actually I think that's a pretty smart one, $5, because it doesn't. It's weird. Like when I was a kid, I got $5 allowance. And $10 would have seemed like a fortune. $4 would have seemed like my parents were jerks.
Yeah.
So $5 for some reason was okay to me. So I wonder how you guys arrived at that price point, given the traffic, given the expenses, all that stuff.
You know, it's kind of funny. In the beginning, when we were doing, ages ago when we had our board game group, we would sort of do a token, throw $2 in the jar, we're getting crackers and cheese and all that sort of thing. So it'll cover the cost of the snacky bits, the snacky poos. And then we find that, we're doing this, we're kind of operating sort of in the red slightly here. So let's raise it to $3. People, it's $3, it's nothing. Throw $3 in the jar for your snacky poos. And eventually we ended up raising it to $5 because we would start getting big groups and we'd have to get bigger venues. And then in some of those situations, we'd have to sort of pay a little bit of money for those venues. So we're like, we can't run at a deficit. So it's like, this has to cover the cost of 40 people coming. So throw $5 in the jar. It'll cover the cost of the place that we're gonna rent the tables at, as well as the snacky poos. So that was sort of the highest we would ever want to go when we were doing that. And then you have a situation like Snakes and Lattes up in Toronto, where they charge $5 Canadian. I don't know how the exchange rate is now in terms of what it relates to with the dollar, which is probably not good. Yeah. Oh, Canada. So when we first set on working on the business plan here, we're like $5 is kind of like there's a value there, but it's not exorbitant. We're not raking people over the coals sort of thing. We can see people sitting down for 2-3 hours to pay $5 a head, that sort of thing. Anything less than that seemed like we were cheating ourselves or we're going to lose money. Anything more than that felt like it was a situation of it's going to be too much, But, we used to do, we sort of still have sort of like a happy hour sort of thing where it was like, it used to be $2 on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you're in before 4 o'clock, it was $2 for the gaming. We recently raised that to $3 because I was just pulling the number saying, I'm just losing money on this, especially in the busy summer months where I get a lot of people because it's time off, and then they'll come in, they'll do their 5 hours of gaming for $2, and they'll get the glass of water, and then they're off to the burger place just down the street to eat dinner, So we raised that to $3, and I got a little bit of grumble about it, but it's like, you're making more an hour than I do, so shut up, But so we raised that to $3. So I am always loath to take it past 5. 5 is an easy number in terms of change. I'm not fumbling around with singles unless they hand me 5 singles. It's a nice even change number. It's a nice set round number. It's below minimum wage. There's a perceived value if you stay for an hour. Yeah, it's worth 5. There's 1,200 games on the shelves. If you stay for 10 hours, oh my God, I paid 50 cents an hour for this. So we looked at different price models. We looked at we could charge them by the hour, or we could charge them by a block of time, or we could charge them by the table. But the problem with that is then it becomes just too much nannying. We looked at like karaoke box or dim sum style setups but it's a situation and people are always like, you should charge by the hour. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. You're gonna, at the end of the night when you're cashed out, you know. And what happens when they do a dine and dash, so to speak? What happens when they walk out the door and then, you know, it's midnight and they're long gone, you know? So,
oh my God.
you know, so yeah, so it's kind of like this was the easiest thing for all involved. You know, you pay your $5 up front, boom, you're in. You get your little sticker. Your little sticker is good for one sitting during the day. You know, so and that was, you know, the easiest we could do it for all intents and purposes, for all involved. Now, I do have to say, though, that, and I've said this to some, because there's all the chatter about minimum wage. Minimum wage goes to 15, that sort of thing. When minimum wage is 15, it will not be $5. It'll probably be $10. You know, just because there's no way that I can pay people and then charge so little in relation to it. You know, so down the road it'll end up rising, you know, because the wages will rise, you know, and because the costs are going to rise too. It gets more expensive every year to do this. You know, it never gets cheaper. So,
I actually wonder. I mean, I think what your rationale for the 5 makes a lot of sense, but I do wonder. You know, you're saying number of meals at regular restaurants, et cetera, because you know, my wife and I were there as 2 people. I don't know how long we were there. I think it was about an hour. So
that's a short time. That's actually a short time. You know, I got people stay for substantially longer.
I was thinking, like, what if we had just been really into it and stayed for 6 straight hours? That would have meant, like, a pretty minimal bill.
Yeah.
And because it's only 2 people. But then we saw this other group. There's like 6 people and some pretty big guys there who were getting really big meals. So clearly they were a much bigger bill. And I thought if you multiply or not multiply. If you compare those, we're there for an hour, maybe 2, and we got, you know, sandwiches each and drinks, and then that was it. But then you got like 6 people who are there probably as long as we were, at least, maybe longer, but they're getting a lot more. So, and I guess this is a problem restaurants face, of course, because you could just go in and order a cup of coffee at Denny's or at a higher level restaurant, then they can't just kick you out, but they're basically losing money on.
Oh, sure.
So
yeah.
I don't know how that works in the long run, because even if you have the subsidizing of the $5 a person, that's only, as you said, you're only charging that once. You're not charging that by the hour. So you only get that once, and they get to stay there however long they want, as far as I can tell. So,
yeah, it was the cleanest, easiest for the customer, easiest for the staff, easiest for us, easiest on my Yelp reviews, you know, all that stuff. You know, it was the kind of the best way for us to sort of do it. You know, I would love to be able to monetize it better. You know, for the people who stay for the hour, it'd be cheaper. For the people who stay longer, it'd be more expensive. You know, but it sort of all evens itself out. It all comes out in a wash at that sort of 5 level. You know.
okay.
So, but if you look at it this way, let's say the group of 6. Is there 10 hours? They're doing more than nursing the Diet Cokes or the ice blend of mocha. They'll get something to eat, then 5 hours later they'll get a slice of cake or a brownie, that sort of thing. So they've all paid their 5. They've all eaten. They've all gotten at least something to drink. They've probably all gotten some dessert. So in the long run, I'm probably doing a little less than I should, than a normal restaurant would do for that table. Versus the table of 2, which is right next to them, which I might have turned maybe 4 times, and they each paid the $5. They each got the latte. They maybe didn't eat, but they were only there an hour or 2, that sort of thing, and I did that 2 or 3 times. I probably made more on the people walking out after an hour and a half or so, you know. But I think in the long term, it all kind of washes out. But you have to say, I have to look at it this way too. It's like the games are the hook, the games are the gimmick. So that $5 is a necessity, but that $5 is the reason they're walking in the door in the first place. Or rather, what they're getting with the $5 is what they're walking in the door in the first place. If this were a normal coffee house, if this were a normal cafe, this would not be huge like it is, you know, in terms of size. In terms, I would not seat, you know, over 70-some, whatever it is, people if this were just a normal coffee house. I would have just one side. I wouldn't have rented 2 spaces. I would have only rented 1 space. And you would have just the one side. It would have been 1,500 square feet, and there would be no games, and it would just be a normal coffee house, and, you know, there would be no cover, you know, and it would just be like a regular cafe, coffee house style thing. So the games necessitate the space. It's a space, we've always said since the beginning, it's a space-hungry concept. It needs a lot of space. And if you were there on the Sunday, I think you were, it was probably packed by 2 o'clock. So if I'm waitlisting people at 2, that means I've got an ass in every possible seat that I can get. And that means, you know, I could use more space. I'd love to have more space because that means more people playing, more money coming in, more food going out, that sort of thing. So it's kind of a weird gray area of coffee house, play space, hobby space, game space, you know, sort of thing. And it has the benefits of both. It also has overlapping problems of both. But if the game aspect weren't here, this wouldn't be in the shape or form that it is now. You know, the games necessitate this much seating because on the weekend we can fill it. You know?
How did you guys decide on things like the menu and the size of the space, and then I guess I'm not sure how to put this, but your gaming policy? Because and correct me on this, but as far as I can understand, you don't actually buy the games that you have. You're getting donations from people.
Yeah, it's just stuff on the. It's just basically a library to come play. Yeah, we don't have a retail aspect. We don't have one in place yet. We're not ruling something out, but it's something that requires a good deal of, you know, capital and space and effort, you know, and then that's a lot of stuff I don't have a lot of right now. So but which is not to say that we would never do it, but it's just something that it's a resource that we're not kind of tapping into because we don't have, you know, the available resources to back it up. So but the menu was the space was partly do some sort of logical order. The space was partly because of what the space was, whether or not we could do it in the space in terms of zoning and all that. If the space was big enough, that sort of thing. We originally looked at the one side. It was kind of this L-shaped configuration, and we looked at it, we was like, this is great, it's not enough space. So if we could take the space next to it, we were actually 2 spaces that we made into one. So we take the space next to it. Now we've got the square footage of something we were looking at. We looked at any and every kind of configuration of space anywhere that we could, and it was a situation of we looked at a lot of defunct bakery spaces where it was tons of kitchen and then maybe space for 8 chairs, and it's like we needed the opposite. I needed much less kitchen and a lot more, you know, table space, a lot more people space, customer space. So it was a situation of we needed something that was at least 2,000 square feet, between 2 and 3. We were looking at sort of our range between 2,000 and 3,000. 2,000 we thought was the barest minimum that we could do it. And someplace that we could actually, you know, do it zoning-wise, because you can either take a space that's not restaurant and make it restaurant, or you can take a space that is restaurant and just keep it being a restaurant. The problem with the second case is that there are lots of dead, empty restaurant spaces, but they're going to charge you because it's restaurant. Your landlord knows that there's a value to it, so they're going to turn around. They're going to charge much more money than they would per square foot than if it's just crappy retail space. Crappy retail space could be anything. It could be a bookstore. It could be a comic store. It could be a record shop. Or it could be, you know, whatever. But restaurant is restaurant. So there's a value that's already been put into it, so they know that they could turn around and charge you because of that value that's already there, particularly if they've got something like a beer and wine license or an alcohol license, because that's tied to the location. It's not tied to the person renting the space. It's tied to the actual physical address. So you could look at a restaurant space and they would be charging like $100,000 of key money because the old restaurant went bankrupt, and all the furniture and the fixings and the equipment and the kitchenwares and all that, it's there. So we'll say, we'll give you $100,000. You can take this all as is right here. You've got a restaurant, you know, but that's $100,000. So, and then an expensive lease. And then what happens if it doesn't go? You know, what happens if it fails? You know, there are lots and lots and lots of failed restaurants out there. Or you could take a space that's not food and make it food, which is what we did, which is another whole process, another whole thing, and another huge expense too, and it's not cheap. A lot of people are like, oh, how much money did this cost? And I'm like, well, it was a lot of money. I'm always loath to discuss the specifics, partly because it's sort of a privacy issue, but also because a lot of it is I will give you a number and it's going to scare you away, because if you don't have that number, I've shattered more than one person's dreams in the span of an afternoon talking to them about this because they want to do this. They want to do this. This is their life. They would love to do this. And I say, okay, how much money do you have available? Well, I've got $8,000. Okay. So how are you going to get the rest of the money? Oh, I'm going to crowdfund it. Okay. So when the Kickstarter campaign doesn't succeed, how are you going to get the money? Okay, I'm going to go small business loan. Okay. When the bank says no, when they look at your credit, when they look at how are you going to get the money? Well, Aunt Fanny's got $10,000. Okay, so you've got your money, you've got Aunt Fanny's money. How are you going to get the rest of the money? Because it's not easy. I have to tell you that my partner and I have excellent credit. We're quote adults. Okay. We are quote adults when it comes to our finances. We had excellent credit. We were going in with our original projections with what we determined was at least 80 to 85% of our own quote skin in the game, our own money, outside of any sort of a bank loan. And a bank turned us down with 85% of our own money on our original projections and fantastic credit scores for both he and I. A bank turned us down. That's the economic climate we're in. We're a startup, we're a restaurant. Boom, done, dusted, failed, no pass. Next, that sort of thing. So it's not a climate where you can easily get money. So it's a very expensive proposition either way. So if you take a space that's not restaurant, make it restaurant, and you're spending money in a different capacity. But we were able to do that. We found this space, which is not without its problems in terms of making it into a food space, but we sort of managed to do it. But a lot of the menu, tied into what you asked about the menu earlier, a lot of the menu is dictated by the limitations of what we could do with the space. Our kitchen is what we refer to as a cold kitchen. We do not have open flame. I'm not hooded. I'm not vented. I've got no grills. I have this fantastic super science convection oven. I've got a panini grill to do the sandwiches on. I've got a soup thing. And that's the extent of the heat that we have, outside of the heat that's generated by the fridge and the freezer and all that stuff like that, in terms of just, it's sucking up, it's keeping everything cold. The only thing generating heat is those three items in the kitchen. So a lot of the menu is determined by, okay, well, we can't do this, so obviously I can't do a burger. I can't grill a burger. I can't grill meat. I can't cook meat, that sort of thing. So a lot of that was determined, okay, so what can we do with this? What can I do with a microwave convection oven combo, this super high-powered crazy oven? What can I do with the panini press? What can I do with the soup tureen? We went to the Department of Health, and we wanted to do those three things and the waffle iron, because we wanted to do waffles on the weekend. And she said, you can have the oven, you can have the panini, and you can have the soup tureen or the waffle iron, but you can't have both. So like, okay, there go the waffles, so because it's like a health, what you can do, how many things you can have. You're not vented, you're not this, that, and the other thing. So there were huge limitations on the space to begin with that we had to overcome, and that's just inside the kitchen as well. All this other stuff that we had to deal with too. So when you find a space, when you do it you do it the other hard way. When you find a space that's not restaurant and you make it into a restaurant, there's all this other stuff which comes into play. But the menu, a lot of the menu was restricted by what we A, wanted to do, and B, could end up doing because of the stuff that we're allowed to have, just because of building of safety and fire and health. And a lot of it is, we didn't want stuff that you're eating with a knife and fork. We wanted stuff you could pick up with your hands. You need to be able to eat the sandwich with, the game, or you can have the bowl of soup. It's not these huge giant platters of food that are going to take up all the table space, and then there's no place for the game. So a lot of that was, you know, it needed to be kind of like coffee house cafe style stuff. None of it's
Right.
I'm always saying none of it's fancy pants. We're not pinky up food. You know, nothing's too fancy. You know, because we don't aspire to be fancy. If you want that, go to Atwater Village. Go to, you know, wherever. You know, where
Right.
there's nothing pretentious about our menu apart from the fact that we put fruit on some stuff. You know, we put fruit on stuff because it tastes good. But yeah, we are not fancy pants. You know, I remember one guy coming in. Is your tuna seared? I'm like, I'm wearing Glendale. No, it's like a tuna sandwich. You know.
Yeah.
Do you fresh squeeze your orange juice? And my answer to that is always there are not enough hours in the day. You know, so no, there's nothing fancy pants about it. Well, I like to think, like I said, I was just saying some this morning. One of the local providers. I'm like, I like to think that what we do is good. That it's not a huge menu, but we do well what we do. So, and it's comfort food. You know, it's like you're gonna be playing Connect. You're gonna play playing Connect 4 and sorry. You know, why do you want to eat? You know, you want grilled cheese tomato soup because that's what you had when you were 6 when you played Connect 4 and sorry. You know, so. But
so I switching gears. I was very curious about how you guys landed on the name because
we're gonna talk about the umlaut. We're gonna talk about the umlaut, aren't we?
Well, my German is absolute shit, but as I recall, German pronunciation, that's a hard A.
Yes, yes.
Hey.
Okay,
and regardless of what you guys, what my interpretation is, I also noticed that there's an ice cream place, I don't know if it's still around, but it was in Culver City that I think was called Ice House, and they did exactly the same thing. So I'm wondering, like, is Motley Crue back?
Okay. Well, you're sort of in the right direction.
Okay.
The state of California does not recognize the umlaut in anyone's name nor in any corporate name. So the state of California does not. I don't think you can get a driver's license with an umlaut because the state of California doesn't recognize it.
Okay.
That said, the umlaut is not in our name, actually. There is no paperwork that we have filed that has the umlaut in it. It's purely graphical. It's purely 2 dice that happen to be hovering over the A, sort of like a Germanic metal A, a metal umlaut, that sort of thing. It's sort of a joke homage kind of to Haagen-Dazs, and you know, it's that foreign branding metal umlaut sort of thing. You know, and partly because so many of these games are European games.
Right.
When we settled on House, we started messing around with it, and at one point the dice ended up over the A, and we're like, oh, that's really kind of funny. So the dice are purely graphical. It's part of the logo, but in all of our corporate this, that, and the other thing, there is no umlaut. Now the umlaut creeps up every now and then, somewhere, usually on the A, sometimes on the U. depending on who's doing the reporting, and we actually I think it's even on our Facebook we included umlaut just because we could, but the umlaut. In fact, I always make a joke that next time I get a set of T-shirts printed up, I'm going to have something printed on the back of the T-shirts which basically says, if you question the umlaut, you're not getting the joke. Yeah. So yeah, it's completely wrong. I will be the first to admit it. I will be the first to finish the person's sentence when they say, well, you know, I'm half German, and yes, I know the umlaut's wrong. You know, so it's just we've had so many conversations about it. You know, usually with Europeans, they're like, you know, it's. And I said, yeah, I know it's wrong. It's just there.
As far as I know, the Haagen-Dazs one is not German. It may be Dutch.
Yeah.
I mean, my expertise is not very high, but if we ask whether that is proper German, the answer is no.
No, yeah, it's foreign branding. Yeah, it's for stupid Americans to think, oh, this is very exotic. It's foreign. It's you know. So I'm sure half the stuff at IKEA is just made up words too. But I like the Publi. Yes, I really like the Publi. You know.
I think they just like hearing Americans say the various ways.
Yeah, so it's entirely a joke. It's all graphical. Yeah. A lot of people don't get it, but it's just kind of there. We just did it.
It's so funny because I being a linguist myself, though not speaking German very well at all. I assumed I was getting something wrong, and I didn't even stop to think about the context, and I also didn't notice that it was dice.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I was completely lost, and when I thought about Ice House, or whatever they're called, I had a somewhat negative experience there, and I started thinking, like, maybe I should, and I did not.
Are they just being pretentious? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't, well, and they were really into, like, you know, it's all natural and crazy ingredients.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're serving, like, sawdust and cigarette butt flavored, you know, and I'm like, why the fuck would anyone want to eat that ever?
Yeah.
But that's their problem. That's not my problem. But having seen that, I thought, I wonder if this is something that's catching on, because it seems a bit more common than it used to be. But then I was like, well, I have no idea how I would even figure that out.
Yeah, for us, it's just a gag for us.
Okay. I've heard you well, but I had just a couple more. One of our editors was curious if you guys are ever going to expand to things like video games, and I thought that would not be possible because that was even more space and heat. But I did wonder if you guys would ever be interested in doing things like those, I don't even know what they're called, but those table games, you know, like the really old Pac-Mans or whatever, where it's...
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's like with the consoles built into sort of the table, that sort of thing. Yeah, we're not, we always want to keep it offline. We want to keep it as analog as possible. Yeah, it's all board and card game stuff, we would never want to do anything electrical, or, you know, we specifically don't offer Wi-Fi, you know.
I didn't even...
we don't have a Wi-Fi password, we don't offer it to the customers because we want everyone off their phones. We want everyone off their devices. We want it to be like back like it's 1983 and you're playing, you know, Monopoly with your next door neighbors, you know. So, But we probably. I know someone does something like that just down the street, and they were kind of talking all about it. I'm like, it's really not our wheelhouse, you know. It's the sort of thing which we're not built for. It's not the thrust. It's not the focus. You know, we're all about the board. We're all about the board games. You know? I
mean, I personally think the board games is the way to go, just because of the sitting down social aspect of it. But I, you know, who knows? I'm actually into one of my penultimate questions, which is, do you see this doing things like there's a place in Portland? I don't know if you've heard of it, but I just lost the name.
Cafe Mom?
No. It's Ground Control, and their whole thing. I don't know how the hell they make money, but their whole thing is it's a huge space. It's kind of a club too. It's very, very hip. It's lots of great, you know, design around. It looks like the Tron thing, and they've got a bunch of coin-op games, and they've also got a full-service menu, full-service bar. But in addition to all that great craziness, they do, like, all kinds of community-based stuff. Like, they'll bring in DJs, they'll have content. It's just, like, I'm on their newsletter, so I'm constantly getting these emails.
Yeah.
Like, this week, and it's like, you know, Nintendo this and Sega. And so I was wondering if you guys seem like you're a bit more relaxed than that, but I was wondering if either now or in the future you're going to plan on doing things like, I don't even know what this would look like, but things like that to sort of really reach out to the community and, I don't know, like competition nights or whatever.
Well, here's the, you know, it's stuff that we would like to do more of. We do what we call Board Games 101, or we used to do a lot of it in the past. We haven't done much of it lately, which would be like tutorials where it's like, at 7:30 on Wednesday night, come learn this big, long, crazy-ass, complex game because we're going to teach it to you. So some of those, in the beginning, we had a good response for it, but the last few times I've done it, I've gotten like one person. Or like, so it's like, so everyone loves the idea of, hey, you guys should do a bunch of stuff. But when push comes to shove, it's like, oh, I'm busy that night, you know. So so or we've done a couple things where it's like a tournament, and I think one of them I got maybe 11 people for one time, which was okay. But in terms of the resources, in terms of, and some people just show up because they just want to play with their friends. You know, so it's something that we would like to. I've been talking with the manager and my partner that we'd like to get back to doing more regularly. But then I know the last several times we have done it, it's been sort of a wash. It's kind of been almost not worth it. You know, so everyone loves the idea of it. But the days in which I can do it, which would be the weekdays, like the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, is the times when a lot of people just aren't available. I couldn't do it on a Saturday, because there's just usually way too much stuff going on a Saturday of just the normalness of a Saturday, or I'll have like a bunch of reservations, or I've got something else big going, happening that day because of so and so is coming, So I'd love to do more of it, knowing that it would sort of pay off. It would be sort of worthwhile. It's the same thing with people do, like you mentioned that place has a newsletter. People like, you should do a newsletter. I'm like, well, I know that half the time I get something in the email, I just delete it. If I'm on I don't read newsletters. I don't have time to write it. So a lot of our channels, it's like Facebook, it's Twitter, it's Instagram, that sort of thing, where we let people know about stuff because it's free, it's boom, it's out there. If you want to follow it, you're following it, So it's something that we would love to do more of, and we're trying to figure out a way, hopefully in the latter half of this year, to get more of that going. But I know the last two times we've done a 101, it's been like one person showed up. And they've been really good games, which has been frustrating. It's like it's stuff that, we should be doing 101s on, but it's like it's one person. So it's like, but,
So for my last big one, kind of staying on that same theme, so Halloween is not too far away, and my wife and I were planning on doing something at our place involving horror-based games, and then actually she suggested your guys' place, so I was wondering, do you do any kind of seasonal stuff? And if so, what kind of stuff do you do?
What's funny? We do usually, October is usually really busy. We've done, in the last 2 Octobers, in terms of what we do, we usually do a lot of tutorials that month because there's a lot of horror and monster-themed games. I think last year we did 5 different tutorials that month. We did 2 a week for a while, where we come learn blah, blah, blah game, come learn this, horror game, that sort of stuff. So, and then, is Halloween on a Sunday this year?
Oh, God, I hope not.
I don't know, Halloween's on I looked at it and I can't remember. I think, is it a Sunday or a Monday? 2 years ago it was on a Friday. It was the slowest Friday I ever had. Calendar.
Oh, no, it's a Monday.
October, it's a Monday. Okay, so I am closed on Monday. So that said, though, that said, because we're always closed on Monday, but what I might end up doing this year, we did it 2 years ago, and we did it on Monday because it required, we're sort of rearranging the space, is that so many of my friends are a fan of Werewolf. That kind of that Mafia Hidden Trader style game, but they do it with a werewolf theme. So 2 years ago we did a big werewolf party the week before Halloween, on the Monday before Halloween, and that was a big hit. So I might do, because Halloween's on a Monday this year, I might do a werewolf thing that Monday. We might do something special for it that Monday. So, we used to do a thing the Halloweens are really weird. More often than not, people are not doing this on Halloween. So the first Halloween I had was the slowest Friday I've ever seen. And then last Halloween was kind of mellow. It was not as slow as the prior, but we always do a thing where if you come in costume, you get discount cover, and I get 2 people come in costume. So because more often than not, come dark, you're out doing the crazy stuff. Everyone's got Halloween parties to go to, or they're doing the boulevard or that sort of thing. So it's usually kind of more of a mellow night here for Halloween. So.
Yeah, it sounds like it's one of those things where, in theory, it sounds great, but when it really comes down to rubber hitting the road, well, I don't know about this.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like there's always so much else going on Halloween. Kind of like usually Oscar night is a little quiet for us. Super Bowl used to be quiet. Used to be quiet for us. Now people do the anti-Super Bowl stuff. They just come here.
I would do that.
Yeah, or the month the Olympics were the year before last, that was really quiet for us. Those 2 or 3 weeks during the Olympics. We usually do, in terms of themed stuff, the seasonal stuff. We usually do a bunch of stuff in October. We did one of the last tournament we had was a King of Tokyo tournament. We did in October, the October before last. I think we had 11 people for it, so that was not too bad. So, and and then New Year's Eve, we always have a New Year's Eve party, which is like a special thing where it's like a package deal, you know.
Right.
And that usually sells out or comes close to selling out. And that's actually kind of a really nice event because there's usually a lot of friends and family and supporters and fans. So it's a really good crowd. It's a really, you know, happy crowd. It's a really positive, you know, supportive crowd. So New Year's Eve.
That actually sounds like sort of a perfect way to spend that.
Oh, sure.
I've never been a New Year's Eve fan.
I hate
like,
New Year's Eve.
I'm basically just waiting for Kathy Griffin to say snarky shit for an hour and watch what's his face awkwardly respond.
Yeah, exactly.
And even that, I'm like, I don't really care.
Yeah, no, I actually hate New Year's Eve. Yeah. Yeah,
this I'm like, I could see just playing a game and then, you know, peeking up every once in a while to see how much closer we are and having a
Yeah, we do. It's usually a thing where we usually do like a package deal. We usually open later. We open like 4 or 5 that night. And then it's like a $15 thing, gets you in for the games, gets you one of the drinks, gets you a sweet treat thing, we do sparkling apple cider at midnight and little plastic cups, that sort of thing, because we don't have a liquor license. I can't do alcohol, but so it's all like a little packagey thing. And then we do raffles and giveaways throughout the night too. So
that's great.
So yeah, it's really kind of, and then Tabletop Day, which is every April, that sort of floating unofficial board gaming holiday. We do sort of the same thing where it's like a package deal where we do like, you know, you buy your ticket in advance and you can see all this fun stuff, and you know. So we do some seasonal stuff. I'd like to get more of a regular, you know. I mean, part of it too is just getting an even keel, just getting like, you know, our sea legs even after 2.5 years of being open. There's still things which we're figuring out. There's still things which we're trying to make better. There's still, you know, you know, if I can get away with with working less than a 70-hour week, it's a pretty good week, you know. And I'm still sort of there, you know. So.
Well, Robert, I've had you a very, very long time, and I really appreciate that. But
no worries. No worries.
But this is great. So so thank you so much for your time. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording now, and then.